Hey everybody, today I'm going to be starting my series on basically like professional techniques, that sort of thing. A lot of you guys said you wanted to know kind of what I was learning as I'm doing my course, so I thought I would start today by doing the basics, foundation, and all the rules that I'll kind of bring up in these videos will apply with whatever makeup you're using. I'm going into makeup specifically for film and television, so some of the products that I use might not be what you're looking for just everyday kind of going to school, going to work sort of makeup. In my kit video, where I showed you kind of the materials that we have, I showed you this, and this is just an empty palette where I put in my Ben Nye foundations, and those are cream foundations, and that's a very common product used in film and television. They are oil-based, so you might not want to try that for just your everyday makeup, but the reason why these are so great is not only because they're matte, but they really do make the skin look flawless on camera and in pictures. So there is a specific way to making this work so that you don't look kind of cakey and gross, but skin is really important, so if you tend to be flaky, it might take you like a week or two to get adjusted to this makeup if you try it and you like it. But again, keep in mind you don't have to use these products to, you know, grasp the concepts. You can see here that there are 12 different colors here for foundation. Most of the time we go to the drugstore or the department store and pick one color of foundation to match our skin tones. But because when you're doing movies and television, you really have to match correctly, otherwise it's going to look like makeup. Most of the time you're combining two colors, sometimes three, but usually it's just two colors, and it's been an interesting process for me to learn because I noticed myself really picking up the undertones in people's skin, and I've never really paid attention to that, so it's a really interesting thing to notice my eye developing. And hopefully for those of you who are makeup artists or aspiring makeup artists, these particular videos will help you, but if you're not, hopefully they'll help you anyways, because that's why I'm doing it. So I have a little metal palette here. This is from Cinema Secrets, and I have a little spatula which to keep the makeup foundation sanitary, I have to scoop out a little bit and put them on this stainless steel palette, and then I mix the colors together. Now this is a shade that's going to match me, and you always want to match to the neck, especially in winter time because we wear scarves and we're wearing coats all the time. Our face is usually what's most exposed on our body, so typically your face will be a different color than your neck, and you don't have that really weird like jaw line where it shows like two different colors. So usually I will mix a couple shades in order to match my neck, and right about here is where we've been taught to test, and that's a really kind of rule of thumb when it comes to matching foundation. So here's my shade, and I know people are going to cringe when I do this. I have a sponge. Now I have always been one of those people who was like, ooh, sponges, they're horrible. But this is probably the most common tool used in the makeup industry because it really does help blend out brush strokes and, you know, evenly place the color without having blobs all over the place. There are other options, like you can use foundation brushes too, but I'm going to, just for demonstration purposes, this is how I do it in class. So once I have the shade I want to work with, I will take my little metal palette here and I'll kind of pounce the sponge in. And then I'll start to apply a very, very light layer. Okay, so once I've applied my foundation, like the base layer, I gotta cover up these little spots I have. I think you can see I've got a few little pimples and my under eyes. Now the product we use for covering up under eye bags is something called the Dermacolor palette. And you can see the top colors here are probably the most used, but in my class anyways. So usually when you want to correct red, I know there's this whole thing about doing literal color correcting. So red cancels out green, green cancels out red. But what you get when you use green with red is you get like a gray. So because you want the skin to look alive, now I'm not saying that all color correcting products that are green or orange or that sort of thing don't work, but to kind of keep the flesh looking more alive and not grayed out, typically if you're trying to correct redness, you go for a yellow. If you're trying to correct blue, like under eye bags, you want to go for something that's more salmony, like more pink. And then if you have darker skin and you've got really dark, like brown under eyes, you want to go more orange. So that's kind of the color theory that or that I've been taught to follow when it comes to color correction. And it actually works really, really well. I always was under the impression use green, buy one of those green sticks and then cover the pimples and then use your foundation over top. But this actually is very effective. I'm going to cover some pimples. So I'm going to go for this kind of yellowy shade with a touch of pink. Just a touch so it's not too far off from my foundation. And I've got still a little foundation left on there, so I'm going to mix it together. So I'm going to get this really opaque, kind of thick product. You can see right there, it's a lot thicker than this foundation here. I'm just going to take an angle liner brush and I'm just going to coat the tip, the very, very tip with that concealer. And I'm just going to just touch kind of where the pimple here is raised. And now just buff it a bit. And I have a little pimple right there that I'm going to work on. I'm going to go for a little bit more pink for my under eyes and just mix a little bit of that in with the concealer mix I already put together. Right, here we go. Maybe I'll just do one eye and then leave the other so you can see. Okay, so I know the lighting is not perfect in here, but I've done this eye, I haven't done this eye, and hopefully you can see the difference here. This looks much better, I think. So yeah, you can see that this area right here looks a less pulled down than this side does. So yeah, very interesting little trick. I'm gonna do this eye now and I'll come right back. So for highlighting and contouring, we typically will do it with foundation. So we'll just lighten it up a little bit. So I've got a little bit of my foundation here. I'm gonna take about half of that and then mix it with a lighter shade, just like that on the bottom here. And then with the rest of the foundation, take like a really dark brown, add a little tiny touch of it, just a touch, and then mix it in. And you can see there's a kind of a more chocolatey tan shade there, and that will be the color I use for contouring. So when it comes to contouring, basically there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can use a brush, you can use a sponge. I use both. So I'm going to use this Great Dome brush here first. It's a synthetic brush. I'm going to go in with the light first. Down the bridge of the nose is always a big one. The chin. And along the jawline, which is one that I thought was kind of new because I hadn't really seen that before. And that basically will make it so that when you contour, it especially makes, gives your face a defined shape. And sometimes, depending on the face, you can add a little bit of a highlight on the forehead area. Now, most people understand highlighting, and basically when you highlight it, it just brings it forward. So it makes it stand out more, just like when you take a highlighter and highlight your notes. So now I've done the highlighting part, I'm going to do the contouring. So I'm going to take a little bit of that darker shade with the same brush. And I always find this a little bit more challenging for me because I don't want to apply too much, but you do want it to be noticeable. So I will contour the sides of my nose just a little bit. Then I will contour my cheekbones. The interesting thing about this too is when we're in class, we stand behind our model and look in a mirror to see, because it's much more like the lens of a camera, so you can see better in a mirror what your completed look looks like versus right up close, which takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's very similar to how I see this in my mirror. It looks very, very light, but when I look on the camera, I can see the sharpness. So just a little thing out there for you. And then last but not least for me, I'm gonna do around the chin area and the jaw, just to make it look a little bit more sharp. Now this area you have to be really careful with. It doesn't matter what kind of product you're using, because you don't want it to be too noticeable. Otherwise it looks like you've got a chin strap of some sort. So just make sure you go lightly. Now for me, because I have a high forehead, I could contour a little bit here and here if I wanted to make my face look a little bit more oval, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. You have to set the makeup. And it's funny because I don't usually do this at home, but especially with this type of product, you need to set it with a powder puff. And I'm going to talk to you guys about some cool products that I've discovered in a different video, but right now I'm just going to use my e.l.f. pressed powder because this is what I have at home. And I'm just going to basically press it in. And there is the famous push and curl, and that really helps everything stay in place. Okay, so that is pretty much the routine that I would typically do for full face makeup before I do lashes or mascara or blush or lipstick or any of that stuff. So this is pretty much step one, basic application, making sure it's really well concealed. If there happens to be any like, you know, more pimples that after you press your powder it's kind of still showing, like I can still see this a tad bit, I can go over it with my concealer again and then press it again with the powder. So yeah, but that is pretty much step by step how it's done, and I hope it was helpful for some of you. I hope you can see the difference from the start of the video to now, and yeah, till next time. Love you guys. Bye.